It is time for the ToddCast Time Machine. Where are we going? Where could we be going? Well, where are we going? We are going, to give you the date, the specific date here. We are going to October 25th. As you know, right? I'm always looking at the week we're in. So October 25th this week, that is the date I am latching onto, because on October 25th, 1929, the United States government and a jury made up of U.S. citizens convicted the first ever cabinet secretary to prison. And it all had to do, and in fact, it all happened. He gets convicted, and a couple days later, the stock market crash and the roaring 20s come to a total and complete end. But that's where I want to bring you. So October 25th, 1929. How did we get to that point where we prosecuted a cabinet secretary? He was prosecuted for his role in so-called Teapot Dome. So I've been teasing about this. Let's talk about it. It was the roaring 20s. It was a decade that treated oil like we treat data today. The fuel of the future, limitless and irresistible, right? The car was just coming up. Everybody realized how important oil was. Well, data is that thing today. Just setting that aside there. Just be thinking about that. But let's go back to the 20s. At the center of all of it sat a rock formation in the Wyoming desert that was shaped like a teapot. This is how the scandal got its name. Beneath it, the U.S. Navy had stored millions of barrels of crude oil for wartime emergencies. This site was called Teapot Dome. When Warren G. Harding became president in 1921, he promised to make Washington run like a business. We've heard that before, right? He was genial, handsome, a little bit more of a salesman than manager, and his poker nights in the White House reflected that. The press called his inner circle the Ohio Gang. These were members of his regular poker game. They were his friends from Marion, Ohio. Harding's newspaper pals, they were campaign backers and other hanger-ons who followed him to D.C. The Attorney General, Harry Daughtry, he used the Justice Department as a political machine, part of the Ohio Gang. Charles Forbes at the Veterans Bureau skimmed hospital construction contracts and fled to Europe when he got caught. Jess Smith was the fixer for Harry Daughtry at Justice. He killed himself as investigations began to close in. It was a government that looked like a poker table, full of cigars and whiskeys and IOUs. Into that circle stepped another man, Albert Bacon Fall. He was a hard-drinking former senator from New Mexico. Harding admired his frontier swagger. This is New Mexico in the 19-teens and 20s, right? Fall ran the Interior Department, and he saw those idle Navy oil reserves as wasted assets. Harding, trusting his friend, Mr. Fall, signed an executive order that quietly transferred control of those fields from the Navy to the Interior Department. Fall then leased them without competitive bidding to two oil barons. Harry F. Sinclair, founder of Sinclair Oil, he took Teapot Dome in Wyoming. And yes, that's the same Sinclair arrow with the green dinosaur logo still operating out of Tulsa today. Edward L. Doheny was the head of the Pan American Petroleum and Transport Company. He received the California naval reserves oil reserves at Elk Hills and Buena Vista. Doheny's firm would eventually be absorbed into Standard Oil of Indiana, later Amoco, and then BP. Sort of a corporate fossil that still traces roots to this deal. So what did Fall get in return? Well, he got $400,000, which is $7 million in today's dollars, in loans and gifts. One infamous delivery saw Doheny's son carry a black bag full of cash straight into Fall's Washington apartment. We haven't had $50,000 paper bags of cash in any story lately, have we? But I digress. When the story leaked in 1922, the U.S. Senate decided to launch hearings led by Senator Thomas Walsh of Montana, a Democrat. Harding, weary and embarrassed, set off on a cross-country voyage of understanding in order to reconnect with the public. Essentially, pay no attention to these scandal headlines that you're seeing. By the summer of 1923, rumors were swirling, not just about Teapot Dome, but about Harding's personal life as well. He had carried on a long affair with a woman named Nan Britton, who claimed her daughter was Harding's child. It's a claim that would be confirmed by DNA tests in 2015, by the way. Another mistress, Carrie Phillips, had written him hundreds of steamy letters the Republican Party would pay to suppress. So when Harding collapsed in San Francisco that August in 1923 and died suddenly at the age of 57, remember he was a little bit overweight, the whispers spread faster than the telegrams. Had he been poisoned? Was this something to do with Teapot Dome? Had he died in bed with another woman? The truth, of course, was more mundane. He likely had a heart attack brought on by exhaustion and bad health. But the gossip, boy, did that stick, because the corruption already felt contagious. After his death, President Calvin Coolidge, Silent Cal, allowed investigators to keep digging because he really wasn't that involved in this. In 1927, the Supreme Court voided both leases, calling them products of corruption and fraud. And on October 25th, which will be coming up pretty soon, so we're almost at the 100th anniversary of this, the 96th anniversary, Albert Fall was convicted of bribery. He'd be the first U.S. cabinet member ever sent to prison. He served 9 months, and he died penniless a decade later. I guess he didn't have a president that was willing to pardon him or commute his sentence. But I digress. That conviction came the very same week the stock market crashed, ending the roaring 20s with some poetic symmetry. A nation drunk on speculation, finally waking up with a hangover. Look, I bring this up not because it's an interesting nugget in history, but because, as we know, history has a way of not quite repeating itself, but boy, does it run. So here we are a century later. The names have changed, but the temptation hasn't. 100 years ago, it was oil leases. Now it's the public-private partnerships, infrastructure mega projects, defense startups, crypto mining zones, social media ventures, all dressed up as innovation, all blurring who's serving whom. President Trump has made these deals a centerpiece of his second term. Some may be legitimate, but as with Harding, personal loyalty often outruns public accountability. The language is even eerily familiar, right? Efficiency, cutting red tape, bringing business savvy to government. Harding used that language. So does Trump. Albert Fall used those phrases to justify bypassing the competitive bidding rules. Teapot Dome taught Congress why oversight is not bureaucracy. It's protection. It birthed, in fact, the modern system of inspectors general at different cabinet agencies. We didn't have them before this. Financial disclosures, Senate investigations that still bear Washl's fingerprints, the Montana senator. But the guardrails only work if we use them, and this Congress does no oversight. We've gone through this. Congress will only do oversight if the president in the if Congress is controlled by a different party than the president in the White House. It actually we ought to change our oversight rules. I believe Japan does it this way, where the out party should always be in charge of oversight. Just pure and simple. Whatever party the president is, the chairman of the oversight committee with subpoena power ought to be from the other party. But I digress. So making government run like a business sounds good until the business becomes self-dealing. And that's what happened with Harding, and that is a concern of what's happening today. Harding's friends called him the most likable man alive, and that was the problem. He couldn't say no to anyone he liked. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Today, as the federal government signs profit-sharing deals with companies tied to the president's allies and family network, the same question lingers that haunted Teapot Dome. Where does public service end and private profit begin? If history has a lesson, it's this: when secrecy and self-interest merge, the scandal isn't an accident. It's inevitable. So before we all call every new venture a partnership, remember what happened on October 25th, 1929, when Albert Fall traded the nation's trust for personal gain. And he fell hard enough to give his name to history on this one. So there's your history lesson for the day. Teapot Dome. I'm telling you, folks, forget Watergate. Are you looking for a parallel of an uncomfortable situation we're in right now with the government's relationship with the tech industry? Go back to the 20s, my friend. Go back to the 20s. There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion from more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. and Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/Toddcast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win.